Coming to you straight from the Rio Grande and beyond. Broadcasting to the four corners of the globe. So grab your seat, your coffee, or your sundowner.
Okay, everybody, here we go.
On point, as always. This is Gloves Off. Gloves Off.
We're back at you and Gloves Off. I'm Paul Buitron. I'm here with Daniel Miller from a movement that's growing here in Texas and for Texas to secede from the Union. And he's going to elaborate more on the organization. How are we doing today?
Hey, doing fantastic, and thanks for inviting me on.
Well, thank you for, number one, pushing this forward because it gives everybody a different option. Let's touch base a little bit on the group. How long has the group been open?
Yeah, our organization was founded in 2005, so we've been around for just a shy over 15 years now. It sort of seems like yesterday sometimes, and then sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago, given how far we've come.
Absolutely. You know, ever since, born and raised in Texas, well, raised throughout because of my father, right? But we've always heard that Texas can secede from the Union. And there's a lot of old timers that want that. And there's some that do, and then some that say, we're fine where we're at. And there's a lot of mixed feelings throughout the whole spectrum of Texans and that are here right now. Sure. I asked several, especially after what happened with the elections. This election that just passed has a lot of people scared. Rightfully so. The new administration that's coming in feels more like a regime than an administration. A lot of people are afraid of it going completely to the left. And most Texans are conservative, most Texans are Christian based, and a lot of them are afraid, are we still going to be able to go to church after this happens? Because, extreme to the left is pushing it way to the side of socialism, which who knows what's going to happen. Let's answer the number one question that was asked. And the question that many say, it's a great idea, but what's going to happen to my social security? How would the merging occur?
Well, look, I'll tell you right now, it actually makes me happy that is the number one question, because it means that people have sort of gotten to the point of imagining what an independent Texas is going to look like, so they've at least accepted that it can happen. But, Social Security is obviously a big issue for people. I think all in, the federal government pays out about $74 billion annually into federal pension benefits here into Texas. So it's a significant amount, but I think it's important, before we even talk about Social Security specifics, to understand that, Texas is a net payer into the federal system, right? To the tune of we overpay about $103 to $160 billion a year, right? So you take all of that money that Texans pay in taxes and everything else that goes to the federal government, they take $103 to $160 billion and do other things with it. And then they provide services or grants or matching funds or whatever. So we're overpaying. We're one of about a dozen states that pays more into the federal system than we ever get back out of it. Okay. So, the thing to understand is that there are ways that Social Security can be handled, but let's just take worst case scenario first, just so we can not take it off the table. Worst case scenario is the federal government says, Texans, go pound sand. You want to leave on your own, go pound sand. We're not, even though your citizens paid into it for a lifetime, we're not going to give them a dime out of it. Okay. Well, not a problem, right? Remember, we're overpaying anywhere from $103 to $160 billion a year. The federal government is only paying out $74 billion annually in federal pension benefits. So if the federal government tells our senior citizens to go pound sand, right? Other than the fact that, you know, the moral discussion about, you know, the federal government and their obligations, we got this. You know, we can easily cover all the chips on the table, okay? Now, that is not a likely scenario. The most likely scenario that you'll run into, because they are federal pension benefits, is what is already existing federal policy, right? If you are a federal pension benefit recipient and you move outside of the country, you can still receive your federal pension benefits. With the exception of, you know, if you move to North Korea or Belarus or Cuba, you don't get them, right? But pretty much everywhere else in the world, if you are collecting Social Security or any other federal pension benefit and you move out of the United States, you can still collect that check, okay? And then for those that are sort of in the middle, right? Folks like us that have been paying into that Social Security system year after year after year, normally what happens is you have the federal government, other countries around the world execute what are called totalization agreements, which essentially says that just because you paid into this system, but now you live in another country and you pay into another Social Security system, you don't lose those credits. And so what it does is it totals up all of your work history under those totalization agreements. So we actually have on our website at tnm.me, we have a whole breakdown about how the totalization agreements work and Social Security, and we go into it in depth. But look, the takeaway is that senior citizens here in Texas don't have to worry about getting taken care of from paying into the system, even if the federal government decides to renegotiate the deal.
Okay. And that's good to hear. The next question, especially being down in Laredo here on the border, is what's going to happen with the border issue? Who's going to be taking care of the borders? It's would no longer be ICE, no longer be Border Patrol. Who's going to be doing that security? Where's the manpower going to come from? How are those changes going to be?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, you know, for the first time, Texas will have total control of both the immigration system and the border. And I think we can all pretty much agree that the federal government has done a pretty poor job at both of those. Both systems are draconian. They are in a shambles. That's why you see for the last 15 years, the number one concern for Texans is combined immigration and the border. And it's because the federal system is so broken. So, you know, let's look at the status quo. The status quo is right now, as Texans, we really don't have much of a say in how either one of those systems work, right? Those systems, those policies, the way that it works is really dictated to us by, you know, those people up there in Congress, the vast majority of which are not from Texas, right? We're outnumbered. There's, you know, between the Senate and the House, there are 535, and we have a total of 38 of those people, 2 in the Senate and 36 in the House. And so, you know, our border policy, the immigration policy right now is being dictated by places like Massachusetts and Connecticut and Michigan and places like that don't have to live primarily with the consequences of their poor decision, right? They pursue a federal policy of one size fits none, okay? And that's just been kind of part and parcel of a lot of the grievance that Texans have with the federal system. That being said, Texit means that for the first time, Texas can address the immigration issue and the border issue in a way that makes sense for us. Right? I mean, it essentially puts the power to make those decisions in our hands. And all of a sudden now we're not being battered about by some national narrative on both of those issues that's not set by us and really doesn't care about how it affects us. But to your point about manpower, you know, many people, you know, a lot of folks need to really understand that a lot of those people that are working for the federal government in those positions live in Texas. They are Texans. So, we can envision right now Texas spinning up its own version of that, whether it's a branch of the Texas Military Department or a branch of the Texas Department of Public Safety. But the fact of the matter is the manpower is already here and the dollars are already here. Because again, let's go back to that $103 to $160 billion a year overpayment. So, we've got the money, we've got the manpower. What we don't have is the ability to set policy.
Absolutely. Now, here comes into our next question, and a question that was brought up to me by a history professor was said, if Texas splits up, what's going to happen to the portions of the territories that were New Mexico, Colorado, Kansas, and Oklahoma? What's going to happen to those? Are they going to come with us, or what's going to happen then? And
well, they were sold. That's the thing about it. They are not Texas anymore. They were actually sold to the federal government, back in the 1800s. So those places belong to the places that they are now. Texas is, look, and let's be honest, we don't want to change the shape of Texas. I mean, think about how many people are going to have to discard their waffle irons, or HEB is going to have to get rid of their Texas shaped chips, right? I mean, we don't want to create too much disruption. But no, those territories were sold, right? Texas received the money and they were sold. So things are as they are right now.
Absolutely. Now, the next question along those lines is Texas will be divided up into several, parishes or states?
Well, no, Texas is Texas, right? I mean, Texas is not a federal system. We don't have states within Texas. I mean, Texas is Texas, just like any other self-governing independent nation state. I mean, we could further subdivide if we would like to within Texas, but we already have that, right? We have 254 counties, and counties are political administrative subdivisions of the state. So we already have that. We have our Senate districts and our House districts. I mean, none of that needs to change unless we want to change it. And I don't foresee that Texans are going to be too interested in that, maybe with a couple of exceptions, one of them being to balance out representation in statewide elected offices. There's been some actual policy discussion about that, but that's not really a function of Texas. It's just a function of how we decide to govern ourselves here.
And right now, in this new entry into legislation, how do you see legislation going? Are they in acceptance? Are they in acknowledgement? How do they feel about the movement?
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting. When we were founded in 2005, part of sort of the way that we decided to organize the movement and kind of the way that we operate was based off of what we saw happening around the world. At the end of World War II, there were 54 recognized countries around the world. And at the end of the 20th century, there were 192, right? So we saw the success of other independence movements, all these different expressions of to reclaim that right of self-government. So, we knew that there was a definite political path that got us from being a state in the Union to enjoying the absolute right of self-government. So 2005, when we started, we laid a lot of groundwork before we ever engaged the legislature. As a matter of fact, we were in existence for 4 years, preparing, building relationships, engaging Texans before we ever engaged the legislature. We understand the process, and the process for this to happen is that, given the way the Texas Constitution reads, this comes down to a vote of the people. We must have a Brexit style referendum here where the question is put to the people and let the people debate on it and then decide on it. The challenge with that is that although we have Article 1, Section 2 in the Texas Constitution that says that the people have at all times the inalienable right to alter, reform, or abolish their form of government in such manner as they may think expedient, there is no mechanism in Texas law for us to have a vote of this nature. So that all kind of culminated in part of what we do as an organization, going out and trying to get a referendum bill passed for a Texas vote. And, we did that since 2009. Every single session, in addition to other issues that we worked, the Texas bill was first and foremost. And we would always get these pats on the back and these attaboys, and we would have these closed door discussions with these legislators. But when it came down to actually taking the legislation and filing it, we had difficulties. We came close 3 times. The first time was with State Representative Leo Berman from the Tyler area when he wanted to file it. And Speaker of the House at the time, Joe Strauss, essentially told him, if you file that legislation, I will make sure that all of your other bills die. And so Leo Berman backed off. The second time was when David Dewhurst was lieutenant governor. We had a phenomenal meeting with him. He brought in a few other state senators, had his staff working on it, and he said that he did not want to move forward until without the approval of the Attorney General's office. And at that time, it was Greg Abbott. Greg Abbott didn't want to touch it because he was preparing for his run for governor and was afraid that it would affect his chances. So that scuttled. Then the third time was State Representative James White. He's just north of Houston, and that kind of actually north of us here in Nederland. He's up in the Woodville area. James went to file it, and the Texas Legislative Council stripped the referendum portion out of the bill and turned it into a resolution. So, we had some folks sign on to that, but because it didn't have any teeth, there was no vote included with it. It was just a kind of a shake your fist situation. It was hard to get anybody excited about it, but we did have some legislators sign on to it. Well, now we've got, State Representative Kyle Biederman from the Hill Country around Fredericksburg and that area, who is filing the legislation that will absolutely give Texans a vote on the issue. Now, where that's going to shake out in this legislative session is anyone's guess, right? It's going to be tough. It's going to be a fight. But at the end of the day, what we're telling everyone, whether we're directly communicating with these legislators or our supporters we're saying, look, we're not saying that, this is a bill to tax it, because that's not what this bill is. This bill doesn't say, okay, we're out of here. What this bill does is it gives the people an opportunity to have a full public debate on the issue that culminates in a vote. And so, it is thoroughly consistent with Article 1, Section 2 of the Texas Constitution. So the question for these legislators right now is not whether or not they support Texas leaving the Union. The question for these legislators is, do they support the right of the people to decide for themselves? And this is going to be an issue that's going to cut very differently than people, I think, suspect, as far as how they feel about the partisanship of this issue. It's going to cut very differently than many people expect.
And what are your feelings about it? Do you think it's going to pass?
Man, I don't know. All bets are off. It requires a different sort of electoral calculus. And look, I say that not because I'm trying to dodge it, but because I've seen it in practice, right? I've seen this happen.
Absolutely.
The two most recent independence referenda that were informative for us was the Scottish independence referendum in 2014, and then, of course, the subsequent Brexit referendum. Those two were extremely instructive, and I think really sort of indicate a lot of the issues that we're going to see in a Texas vote. But one of the things that was absolutely a very clear takeaway was in the run up to the Brexit vote and the results of the Brexit vote. You saw that particular issue cut across, labor, which is that's the British equivalent of the Democrats. You saw, people in the Conservative Party. You saw people kind of lining up on different sides that would never agree politically on anything, on any other policy, you saw, this thing cut through this. And look, we're already going to see that. We saw polling in 2014 from there was a Reuters Ipsos poll that was conducted here in Texas it was conducted across all the states, but the Texas results were quite interesting. 54% of Republicans, about half of independent voters, and 35% of Democrats believe that Texas should leave the Union in 2014. So that gives you an indication of where this issue falls. It is not a partisan issue. It is a Texas
Sure.
issue.
It's a Texas. You're absolutely correct. We have to take into account that, Texans are Texans. Like they always say, I'm a Texan before I'm an American.
It's true. I mean,
It's true.
I mean, people. I mean, when third-party polling companies go out and conduct polls and studies, asking the question, "Do you think do you consider yourself a Texan first or an American first?" The fact that they're even spending the resources to ask that question means that something is there.
Absolutely. So, with that being said, you're going to have those numbers. The other numbers might be, I call them the transplants. The ones that got here quicker.
Sure.
As quick as they could, like that bumper sticker says, and those are the ones that are probably on the opposite side of that
You'd
it
be
should stay.
surprised. Yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised. I mean, there are some hard data to indicate that, we're not getting our politics watered down from outside of Texas, right? If you go back to the data that was run after the Cruz O'Rourke race in the last cycle, one of the things that you see that was that Ted Cruz was pushed over the finish line, barely. I mean, he barely won that race, but a significant number of his votes came from people who had just come to Texas. What we're seeing is,
Sure.
there is some legitimate concern about, folks moving here from California or New York and voting like they did there, which ought to give us, which ought to really kind of give us all a kick in the pants and say, okay, let's get this thing done. But what we're seeing really on the ground is that a very large number, if not the majority of those people that are moving here, are doing so because they are political, cultural, or economic refugees from those failing states. I mean, California is doing everything it possibly can to drive its producers out. The people like Elon Musk, who relocated to Texas because, we have a business-friendly climate, we have no personal income tax, and, we don't try to micromanage every aspect of our citizens' lives. And he's not the only one. I mean, we're seeing and we hear from people all the time here at the TNM that are fleeing their states, coming to Texas because, number one, they expect Texas to leave the Union. And number two, they could no longer tolerate the political, cultural, economic climate in the state in which they're leaving. This is very reminiscent of when Texas became a republic or even shortly before, and people in the other states would paint GTT on their door and leave, gone to Texas. They were looking for prosperity. They were looking for opportunity, and they were looking to flee the circumstances where they were before.
Absolutely. And, legislation starts next Tuesday, doesn't it? Next Monday, Tuesday?
Yep. The 12th is when the legislature meets. Of course, the only thing that happens the first 30 days is committee assignments and bill filing.
Sure.
But we're already working the legislature. We're encouraging every one of our supporters. We're connecting them with their legislators, directly, their state reps and state senators, saying, look, you need to, whether you agree with Texas or not, you at least need to support our right to have the discussion and have the vote.
Absolutely. It has to be out there. And we have to have that chance to decide.
Yeah, I mean,
if it happens now, if it goes in now, and every couple of years it happens, just like Puerto Rico has had this chance to become part of the union, they vote no. Same thing can happen here. The majority can say, you know what, we're going to stay in the union. The majority can say, you know what, we want to vote out. We're going out of the union. So it has to be given to the people. If if at one time it was a republic, then we should have that right to continue having that option.
Yeah, I mean, look, I quoted Article 1, Section 2 of the Texas Constitution a minute ago, but I think Article 1, Section 1 is pretty clear. It ends with words, the perpetuity of the Union depends on the right of local self-government unimpaired to all the states. And I think everyone would be hard pressed to make a case that our right of local self-government hasn't been impaired. I mean, if you think about it right now, regardless of which side of the political spectrum anyone is on, as Texans, we can come together and we could say, look, here's this thorny issue. We're gonna cuss and discuss, and we're gonna address it. And so we have these debates, these vigorous arguments, and then one of two things happens. Either we say, look, we agree to disagree, and we'll just table it for now, and we'll revisit it later, or we come to some sort of decision. We come to a consensus. And the realization is dawning upon people, and has been for a long time, that no matter what we decide here, it can be overridden by the stroke of a pen by some unaccountable federal judge or an unelected federal bureaucrat. At the end of the day, Texans are realizing, and remember, this is not a Trump thing, right? This didn't just happen in this election cycle. This is the way it
Absolutely.
is. We overpay into the system. We live under 180,000 pages of federal laws, rules, and regulations administered by 440 separate agencies and 2.5 million unelected bureaucrats. We do not enjoy the right of self-government as long as decisions can be overridden from beyond the borders of Texas. So, we're saying, look, let's reclaim our right of self-government. Let's reassert our status as an independent nation, and let's govern ourselves. Let's keep our money here. We're already the 10th largest economy in the world. You cut the federal government off at the wrists and, with their hands in our pockets, and that money stays here in Texas. You're looking at Texas perhaps being the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world. You're talking about a Texas that, if it just did sort of between the NATO minimums and the global average for defense spending as a function of GDP, could have the 5th or 6th most well-funded military in the world, if that's what we choose to do. Imagine going into a session of our elected representatives and them not having to fight over how to fund schools, right? Or how we're going to pay for, insert program here, right? Imagine for a moment now that we have no income tax, period, because Texas doesn't have one. That federal income tax could go away, and we wouldn't have to worry about that anymore. All of these things that we find so onerous about the federal system go away, and then the responsibility is ours.
Absolutely. Well, we're gonna hope and see which way. How many do we need for them to pass a bill? We just need one, don't we?
Well, to get them to pass the legislation, we need a simple majority in both the House and the Senate. And then ultimately, if we've got enough pressure to facilitate a majority in the House and the Senate, we can get the buy-in for the governor. But that remains to be seen. Look, it's going to be hard, right? There's a lot of political headwinds that we've got to deal with. But as we have seen with so many issues time and time again, that is overcome by mass numbers of constituents expressing their level of support for an issue and making these elected officials know that it is a voting issue for them. If these people fall on the wrong side of it and stand between the people and their right to be heard on this issue, it should cost them votes, it should cost them donations, and ultimately it should cost them in an election. So that is the message that needs to be communicated.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else you'd like? If somebody would like to get involved with your organization, how can they get a hold of it?
Absolutely. I would say social media, but I don't know that that's the best. No, I wouldn't say social media. Look, our website is the nerve center for all of our activities. You could go to our website at tnm.me. That's like Texas Nationalist Movement.me, tnm.me. And there we have an entire section dealing with the Texas issue. So people, if they have questions, we have a lot of territory covered there. Pretty much every conceivable question is there. But even if it's not there, people can submit their own questions. There, they can join the organization and become a member. They can register their support. They can make a donation. We'll do our dead level best. One thing that we do right off the bat when people register their support is we automatically match them up with their elected representatives and provide a mechanism for people to contact their state rep and state senator. So I would just recommend everyone go to tnm.me and join the cause today.
Absolutely great. Well, it's news that comes to everybody. Some Texas ears are flapping right now. Smiles are happening. And there's others that might frown, but still, it's all right. And I want to thank you for doing what you're doing, and thanking the group for standing up, because you're standing up for the rights of many, and you're thinking about the future. And like I said, who knows what's going to happen, especially within the next couple of weeks with what's happening right now. So you might end up with that vote coming a lot sooner than later.
I really hope so. I've worked at this for 24 years now, and ultimately, and look, I'll say this, and I know we're wrapping up here, but I think this has to be said. This is really about the people, and it's about Article 1, Section 2 starts with those words: all political power is inherent in the people, and for us, Texas and Texas independence puts that power back in the hands of the people and strips it away from a political establishment, a political elite that believe that they know what's best for us, that we
Absolutely.
are somehow just too daft and too stupid to make our own decisions. And so as a people, that should really infuriate, especially as Texans. That should really infuriate us, but it should invigorate us to engage this political establishment, to break their back and reclaim our right of self-government.
Absolutely. Well, I want to wish you the best day. I want to thank you once more, and repeat the website again.
Sure, it's tnm.me.
Thank you, and wishing you a great year. And we'll be in touch, because we'll do again. We'll do another podcast, and I want to keep up with the news and see which way we're going and what people can do or what other questions have arisen. And the best of luck.
Hey, thank you so very much. I really enjoy this and do appreciate it. And by the way, I love your background there. It's phenomenal.
Thanks. Well, this started off just a little story about us. This is the first school of savate here in the United States. Savate's an old French art of fighting, pugilism. Yep. So this is the first school of savate in that. So there's a lot of history just in here. If I could, it ended up becoming a museum kind of sort of thing. We have we have more stuff of savate here than they do in France.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well,
from book to everything else, So.
Well, look, when I get down in your neck of the woods, I would love to come see it.
Come on over. We'll have a nice meal with part bread, and we'll chat some more. And you be safe. I enjoyed it.
Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, and definitely let's keep in touch. Okay.
We have to. And if, like I said, this is something that's I think the energy that's going on now and the happenings with this past election, people are tired, and I think the movement's going to change just a little bit different.
Yeah, it's weird, and I mean, I guess we're just chewing the fat here. It's like I did an interview with Business Insider the other day, and I told the lady, I said, look, I said, my frustration with your colleagues is that you guys act like this thing just sort of happened, right? I mean, they, the mainstream media, they love to act like this just popped up out of nowhere. It's like, we've been at this for 15 years and we have, and it's not like we had overnight success, right? I mean, the thing is, yeah, we're getting a lot of people in now as a reaction to, their concerns about what's going to happen out of DC. But, they fail to mention that, we started during the Bush administration. We continued to grow. When we started in 2005, support for Texas independence was in single digits, right? I mean, we were below 10%. By 2009, we were up to 50% of Republicans, 45% of independents, and 15% of Democrats. By 2014, we were already a majority of Republicans, about a majority of independent voters, and over a third of Democrats. And then you look at subsequent polls. I mean, that stuff didn't just happen out of nowhere. I mean, we have been engaged just like any other political advocacy organization on the ground, meeting with Texans. Paul, I've done probably 1,500 public events in that amount of time. I mean, it was ridiculous, the level of work that us and our volunteers put into this. And so while the mainstream media loves to look at this like, this just suddenly popped out of nowhere, these are just a bunch of Trumpers, it's like, no, you don't understand. Just because this is the straw that broke the camel's back doesn't mean it's the only straw, right? This has been coming a long time.
I don't know if you remember back in the 80s, there was another movement. Remember?
Yep.
There was even a standoff for a while. Remember up in West Texas, someplace, Hill Country, someplace. I can't remember where it was at.
It
was taken a little bit different. It was squashed back then. It was before Richards, so it's been going on for a long time.
Yeah. Well, look,
Texas has been ongoing since it became a state.
Well, and that's the other thing. I mean, the other, and I'm glad you understand it, because a lot of these mainstream media guys don't get it. It's like people forget. We have on our main shirt that everyone buys, our kind of our unofficial T&M uniform. We have the Sam Houston quote on the back. I mean, literally right after Texas joined the Union, Sam Houston said that Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. And so that has, people may not remember that quote. They may not even know it, but at a very fundamental level, I think all Texans have been there. The number one thing, right? Okay, so the number one question we get here is Social Security. The number one question we get from people around the world that are not in the United States and not in Texas is, why haven't you done it already?
No, you're absolutely correct. I went to school in France, and I'll finish with this. And I was walking down Montmartre, and I was walking down a house, and I was just kind of, looking at where we're at, kind of looking at the scenery and everything. And I looked up at this house, old house, had a fence, it had a seal. I remember the seal of Texas, President Sam Houston, and that was the house of the ambassador at Sam Houston's time. So in Paris, there was an embassy. That was the embassy,
right,
of Texas, and it had a huge plaque. At that time there was no cell phones, there were no selfies or anything like that going on. And you just saw that, and you look and you said, "Okay, cool." You kept on walking, but it was already around. Texas was a nation. The Lone Star has to shine, and it always shines above all the rest of the 48. That's plain and simple. We lead the way, and hopefully we can lead the way into a better government. Absolutely. And if we can't lead the way into better government, we have to lead the way out of that government, because many people are afraid of what's going to happen.
Sure. Well, there are so many people out there, and look, we're obviously getting hammered from outside of Texas. I mean, people are just like, what are y'all going to do? What are y'all going to do? And, there's people who suggest that there should be some union on the other side of this. And, what we tell people is, look, we're not fighting for our right of self-government so hard just so we can turn around and give it away to another unaccountable, bureaucracy, right? So the beautiful part about it is that you take out a globe, you spin it, you put your finger down on any country and realize that those people are a self-governing independent nation. They trade with other states, other nation states. They engage in mutual defense treaties with those guys. I mean, they operate in the world on all of the things that we would normally say, okay, well, these are only functions of the Union. And they operate as independent self-governing nations. Nobody makes decisions for them but them, but yet they somehow manage. And so the opposition's position is that somehow those people can do it, but we can't. I mean, how ridiculous if you think about that. We're the place that says, if you want something done, tell a Texan that it can't be done, right? So, it's just an amazing thing. And this is why we feel when we take this to a referendum, right, whether it's in this session or next, when this goes to a referendum, the bottom line is we believe that we're going to landslide it because we can make our case for Texas independence. They can't make their case for why Texas should stay.
No, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. And like I said, best of luck. I know you've been working hard, and when you're working hard on a project, you give all your passion. You can tell that right away. But I think right now it has to be given the right to be brought back towards the people of Texas. Well,
sir, we are in one accord on that issue. So, well, look, we'll definitely stay in touch. If you need anything after this, definitely reach out and
we'll touch base mid-February and see how everything's going. And likewise, if something changes, give us a call back and we'll put you back on and give us a news.
Sounds great. I appreciate you so much, and you have a great weekend.
You be safe. Bye-bye.
Today in America, more than 5.5 million men, women, and children train in a martial art regularly. Buitron Academy has been serving Laredo for over 30 years now. Our adult classes are geared for producing the best in you, teaching you street-ready techniques. With the arts of Savate and Kinpo, you'll learn the traditions of these sciences of combat, as passed down professor to student.
Hello, my name is Stephen Plank, and to whom this may concern. Professor Paul Buitrón is an outstanding human being and a close friend of mine, where his martial art prowess and skill is at equal to his humanity. His teaching capabilities are what one would expect of someone from his caliber. I've been in martial arts since I was 9. I'm 65 years old now. However, if I had a son or daughter who needed to learn self-defense, anti-bullying techniques, and/or gain a higher level of skill in fighting, and in which I could not instruct, then Professor Paul Buitrón would be my choice. His martial understanding of his Savate is higher than anyone else I have met. His pedigree is impeccable. He comes highly recommended by myself, Guru Stephen Plank. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Richard Planis. I was the vice president of the IKKA for Ed Parker for many years, 10 years before he died. And I still travel the world teaching all over. And I met lots of people through the years. And one of them I want to congratulate is Paul Buitrón down in Laredo, Texas. He's opening a new school, and that's always good to hear. I've known Paul since he was about 18 years old. I couldn't even tell you how old he is now. We've known each other for a long time, and he's like a lot of people should be, takes art seriously. He incorporated many arts, in his school. He does, capoeira, silat, jiu-jitsu, eskrima, kenpo, lots of different things. Any art like myself that you see a value in, you can bring it in and incorporate it if you want to. Anyway, so he's opening a new school, and I'd like to recommend it to anybody who wants to train down in the Laredo area. Meet him, go see him, you'll have fun. Thank you. Bye.
Come train at the best kept secret of Laredo. Give us a call for your free evaluation at 956-401-4868 or check out our website at savat.biz. Follow us on YouTube and Facebook.